Yes, Mr.
Boomer.
Life.
Yes, Boomer.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Boomer. Boomer.
Let Ali pass through. There you go. Good, grateful afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you're tuning in across the globe. Thank you for being here. And when I say grateful before I say morning, afternoon, or evening, I truly, truly mean that. As you will see throughout this presentation, I come from a life and a history that is filled with trauma, that is filled with experiences that were normalized to me throughout my life. So basically that trauma that I endured, didn't think anything of it, right? And across the globe, we have several individuals in much of our youth that are undergoing trauma on a daily basis and not realizing it. And that trauma can have long-term negative health outcomes, whether it's mental health or physical. I know that in a lot of these sessions here at IYC 8, we have heard of different ideas and ways to counteract these sustainable development goals and achieve them by 2030. But in order to achieve those goals, we have to work on ourselves. We have to understand how we can overcome challenges and barriers to be our best selves. Before I get started, I always like to acknowledge all the individuals that we've lost to substance use disorder, trauma, or negative health outcomes. It is for them that I stand up here and present. It is for them that I share their story. And it is for them that I will continue to move forward and advocate for vulnerable populations. Let's talk about the perception of normal. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, whatever we grow up with, these experiences that we grow up with, that becomes our normal. The normal for me was watching my mother abused by her first husband. The normal for me was watching my siblings be the victims of child abuse. The normal for me was substance abuse in my family. That is the normal that I tolerated. That is the normal that became my life as I grew into my teenage years and my transitional aged youth years. But throughout that time, there were risk factors that I showed where something could have been done, something could have been changed, but nothing was done. So how do we counteract that? As I said, my childhood was filled with exposure to child abuse, exposure to domestic violence, family dysfunction, not knowing who my real father was. There was just a constant trauma that was beating down on me, changing the way that my brain functioned, changing the way that I was able to receive information, to store memories. And then as I began to grow older, I found out who my real father was. I slowly began to have a stable environment, but still, as that stability began to come and that sense of calm set in, I still had addictive behavior showing, and I still had trauma being pressed on me. When I was in high school, I woke up after my freshman year and I found my mom paralyzed on the ground. I didn't know what to do, and I called my dad, and he rushed home and he took her to the hospital. And I found out that my mother had cancer and she had been sick for a long time. She had been sick for years. And everybody in my life knew that, except me. Except me. Now, years later, I realized that my mother was trying to protect me. But what was really happening from hiding that illness was the fact that she was causing more trauma and leaving me wondering why I didn't deserve to know what was wrong with her. My father was also sick for several years, so when I was in my 16, 17, 18-year-old time, I was left parentless. I was living at home, eating fast food, non-healthy food, gaining weight, and abusing alcohol. This is when my substance abuse began. I had emotional neglect as I had no relationship with my father. I don't think he really ever gave me a hug until I was like 25, right before he passed away. And I was, found myself just like my mother, and watching that abusive relationship that she was in, I found myself in the midst of an abusive relationship where I was physically and verbally abused for years, and I stayed. And why did I stay? Because she had a family. She had a table that I could sit at and I could eat and I could feel welcome. So I tolerated the abuse because I needed somewhere to belong. I needed somewhere that I felt safe. But was I really safe? No. The reality of all of that I briefly, mentioned in the trauma is that childhood trauma, right? The divorce, the broken family, incarcerated family members that I had in my on my dad's side, the grief and loss that I was going through, the substance use disorder, the domestic violence and verbal abuse, the mental illness, the emotional neglect, all of this, the reality of this childhood trauma, are adverse childhood experiences, commonly known as ACEs. Now, in the 90s, Dr. Vince Felitti did a revolutionary study where he wanted to look at the impact that negative childhood experiences had on children, right? So the ACEs score is 10. Okay, there's 10 ACEs in the standard ACEs score. My score is 9, a 9 out of 10. Now, for those of you that are students and going to school, a 90% is a great grade, right? We're excited, we're happy. But when it comes to this, a 9 out of 10 on this scale means that you are 4 times more susceptible to negative health outcomes. You are 8 times more susceptible to having substance use disorder issues. And having 5 or more of these ACEs, I mean, those stats that I gave are just with like a score of 2 or 3, right? 5 or more of these ACEs means that you are going to be 10 times more likely to experience addiction issues. Well, I'm a grateful recovering addict, right? So the fact that I was abusing substances in my adolescent years from all this trauma, now we know that is very likely to happen, and we can kind of counteract that, right? We can provide support and resources. But at this time, this was still being discovered. My family had no idea what to do. So I had a life of addiction. I didn't have positive coping skills, whether my coping skills were drugs or alcohol, or eating an entire bag of Doritos, drinking a 12-pack of Coca-Cola every night. If it set off that dopamine in my brain and I enjoyed doing it, I did it to the fullest. I could sit down and play video games all night. I would do anything that took me away from where I was. And I had continued traumatic experiences as I transitioned into college. I was denying the issues that I had. And that continued trauma that I was experiencing was still not being able to deal with the grief and loss of my mother and father. The lack of support around me as I waded these waters by myself, staying in that abusive relationship, manipulative family dynamics, and in relationships that I was in also witnessing abortions and miscarriages, right? All of that trauma just continued beating on me and beating on me and beating on me as my addiction grew. And because of that lack of positive coping skills, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I worked through all that trauma using alcohol, using drugs, and even using relationships, right? I could not be alone. I was very codependent. Okay, I did not know how to sit by myself. But as my trauma grew, my addiction also grew and progressed. So addiction is a progressive disease, right? Nobody wakes up one day and says, you know what, I think I'm going to be an addict, okay? It starts somewhere, and oftentimes this starts long before we pick up substances. Like I said, I could drink a 12-pack of Coca-Cola. I could eat a bag of cookies. Those are addictive tendencies. If you see those, you probably shouldn't pick up drugs or alcohol, or you should learn some healthy coping skills, right, and learn moderation. But my addiction progressed from alcohol to marijuana use to Adderall to cocaine, and then eventually what would be my vice and my ultimate downfall, opiates and IV heroin use. Once I had started using heroin and intravenous drug use, my life became absolute chaos. I was in denial. I had no idea that I had a problem. I hid it from my family. I had episodes of homelessness, episodic homelessness, but then I became a father. With no parenting skills at all, I became a father. I was still in active addiction. I was unable to care for myself. So now how could I care for a child? How could I nurture him? Well, ultimately I couldn't, and I ended up arrested and having my son taken away from me by Child Protective Services. That was my son like 2 hours after he was born. And from that arrest, we look at my criminal record, right? Because I'm very transparent. I am a convicted felon, okay? I'm a convicted felon, and I wear that loud and clear and proud. Because just because we are system impacted does not mean that we cannot be what we always thought that we could be. It does not mean that you cannot be more, right? My arrest record is all drug use, right? All drug use. One arrest stems 7 charges that I wear with me, and I used to not talk about openly, right? And now it is the platform that I stand on. But I want to highlight this because when I did get arrested and when CPS did take my son away from me, they came and they knocked on my door for a welfare check. He looked at me. And he said, do you have anything in the house? I said, no, I do not, but I have a syringe. Please take this from me. I was asking for help. That ask for help put me in handcuffs and a jail cell. While incarcerated here in the United States, there was a lack of resources. There was a lack of support. There was a lack of programs. There was a loss of hope. All that I was able to do was meet new connections of other individuals that use substances, and we could talk about how we were going to use substances together when we got out, or where we could get the cheapest stuff. We talk about rehabilitation with incarceration in the United States, but what we really have is re-traumatization. Without resources, without support, without programs, without hope, how can you expect an individual to thrive and be successful when they re-enter society? It's not possible or very unlikely, right? So they end up right back. There's a reason why recidivism rates are so high in the United States. Almost 87% of individuals that go back to jail within the first 2 years are because of technical violations. Technical violations basically means that you can't pee clean or you're not turning in paper. Well, if you can't help an individual get clean, how can you expect them to have clean urine? Right? We know that this is going to happen. When I did get out, my life was spiraling out of control. Okay, even more so because of the lack of resources, the lack of support, and I had no desire to get clean. I was unable to meet my pre-trial and my post-trial sentencing requirements, which basically meant that I went on the run. Right? I went on the run because I knew I was going to go to jail if I showed up to probation. I was homeless. I was living on the streets. Eating out of dumpsters at times, going from friend's couch to friend's couch if they would let me. And basically, I also was, helping other individuals get drugs so that I could get mine, so that I could survive and stay well. Okay. And I had lost all communication with my family because I just didn't know how to talk to them. I didn't know how to talk with myself. If I didn't want to sit with myself, why would they want to sit with me? Finally, I had hit rock bottom on January 21st of 2017. I was homeless. I was walking on the streets all day. I had finally gotten some heroin from a friend, and I walked into a CVS bathroom, and that's that bathroom. Okay, I went back and I took a picture. Okay, I walked into a CVS bathroom right before they closed, and I took my last shot of heroin and the last time I used substances, and I overdosed on the bathroom floor. The CVS workers came in. They were able to revive me. I was scared. I was confused. Instead of waiting for emergency services to come, I got up and I ran because I knew I had a warrant. 2 days later, I walked into a NA meeting, hopeless. I found a community. I found a fellowship. I found individuals that saw me for who I was and were doing the things that I wanted to do. I found a home. I always say that heroin used to be the rain, right? Or the umbrella that kept the rain from coming on me. Then it became the 12-step fellowships and my communities that kept me clean. I needed help. When I was at that NA meeting, I ran into a friend from college and I said, I need help. I waved that white flag. He made a phone call. 30 minutes later, I was on a white bus and I had no idea where I was going. I found myself at rehab for the first time, and only time actually. And there at rehab at Rivendell Recovery Center in Northern Virginia, I found peer and community support. See, peer support is so important because if you haven't gone through the same experience that I have, how can I talk to you about what I'm going through? How can you help me navigate these challenges and these barriers and these circumstances if you don't understand where I'm at? That's why I couldn't talk to my family. They didn't know how to help and I didn't know how to tell them what I needed. But peer support and community support helps improve self-efficiency, right? They teach you how to grow. They don't tell you what to do. They suggest the things that you should do and allow you to empower yourself and be accountable for yourself. And they transfer their knowledge and their skills and their encouragement and the things that I didn't have while I was incarcerated, their resources, so that you can thrive. And what does that create? Hope. Hope. I found myself in like what everybody in recovery has is kind of like the recovery bubble, okay? There's this thing in recovery called the pink cloud, right? And they always say you're going to be riding that pink cloud, which is that high of being clean and sober, until that pink cloud pops, right? And then you come back to reality and you have to deal with all the things that you've done that are horrible. But what if that pink cloud doesn't have to pop? What if you can understand that all of these challenges and hurdles and barriers that you went through are actually strengths that you can move forward on, and you can keep that positive attitude and move forward? Well, I did that by finding my own path, right? And stepping out of just the fellowships, but finding the things that I needed to do. My sister, who my mom gave up for adoption like 50 something years ago, she found her way back into our lives shortly around the time I was getting clean. And she told me, I think you just need a new area, a new place to spread your wings. And she moved me to California. Her and I had only spent 12 hours together total, and she bought me a plane ticket to come move in with her. Recovering addict, convicted felon, going off to California. We have no idea. We don't know each other. But it brought me into a life-changing circumstance and connecting with her family, who saw me for who I was then, not who I used to be. And I found that supportive community. I was able to reconnect with my own siblings on the East Coast. And I was able to even reconnect with my childhood friends because I had familial support and a community that kept me safe. So positive experiences are really what I started to develop in California. I was going to church every Sunday. I was a part of a Bible study. I was going to the gym. I became a spin instructor. I was around my family that was always, helping me achieve my goals and providing these positive experiences. And positive experiences are very important to counteracting adverse childhood experiences. It's really like a 10-to-1 ratio, right? Where positive experiences can bring that life course chart up from the adverse childhood experiences. So the more positive experiences that we can provide children, that we can provide individuals, right? Let's not just talk about adverse childhood experiences. Let's talk about adverse life experiences, because we still undergo trauma. But what positive aspects can we do to help bring ourselves up and stay positive? Can anybody give me an example of a positive experience in the room that you might think is a positive experience? Okay, I'm going to give you a scenario, right? Just saying hello to somebody is a positive experience for that individual, because you don't know if that individual has ever been seen, right? So throughout this entire conference, we have talked about small actions to achieve these monumental goals and achieve the SDGs. Well, a small action that you do can actually change the life of an individual for the rest of their life. That one hello can cause them to go to college, can cause them to call their family, can cause them to create more positive experiences as they move forward. So it's not just big things, right? It's small. And that creates an environment for growth, right? So there's this psychological concept called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, okay? And it's got 5 different levels. And what I find fascinating about this is when my mentor, Ruby Guillen and Joseph Powers and my academic teachers started teaching me about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I had no idea what this was. And then they started teaching it to me, and I said, oh my goodness, that's my life. That's my recovery, right? So basically what this says is that if an individual does not feel safe physiologically, right? They have no safety. If they're stuck in these bottom 2 rungs, if they don't have food to eat, how can they reach the top 3 levels, right? Which ultimately is self-actualization. But my favorite level of this is number 3, love and belonging. Love and belonging. And we're going to get to an exercise in a little bit where we are really going to learn how to create that sense of love and belonging, not only for others, but for ourselves. There's also setting goals, right? And I see the youth in this room, and I see all of, the youth tuning in online that have these lofty, giant goals. You guys want to create monumental change in this world, which is amazing. But for some individuals, it takes small goals to create that monumental change. When I work with individuals in recovery, when I was in early recovery, I didn't even know how to take a shower properly. I did not know how to make a sandwich, right? I did not know how to care for myself. So we talk about SMART goals. Your goals need to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, right? So we start small. If the only thing that you can do today is take a shower, I am proud of you. You accomplished something. Now let's do that 3 days in a row. And on that fourth day, let's make your bed. Let's take a shower and make your bed. And then maybe you should journal before you go to bed. And then eventually all of these small goals become building blocks that create that monumental change. Not only for ourselves, but for the people around us. Okay? And while we talk about specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, the two most important aspects of this to me is it achievable and is it realistic? When individuals get clean, they often relapse because they say, I can never stay clean forever. Well, I don't need you to stay clean forever. Can you stay clean for the next 30 seconds? All right, now let's take it from there. Let's try a minute. Let's try 10 minutes. Okay? That's achievable. That's realistic. And now you are accomplishing goals. And you can move forward. And eventually, you can have, hopefully the rest of your life clean and sober. And from that and those small building blocks, that's what creates that monumental change. For individuals, you can go to college. You can graduate from college. You can get a job, right? These things that we never thought we can do, we can get a job. You can reconnect with your family. And then eventually you have the entire world in your hands. And all of you in this room have the entire world and opportunity in your hands. And if nobody has told you today or this week that they are proud of you, I am proud of you because you are all attending this conference because you are eager to learn. You are eager to thrive. You are eager to make a change in this world. And now I'm going to challenge you. Before you can change the world, whose life can you change? What can you do to help one individual be seen? So that's my challenge for you this weekend, okay? Find one individual, whether it's a phone call or in person, and how can you do something positive for them? Now we're going to talk about the power of gratitude, right? Because after all, the title of this presentation is Finding Strength and Resilience Through Gratitude, Love, Unity, and Empowerment. Gratitude is incredible because it really creates happiness. It makes you feel positive emotions. It improves your health outcomes. And there's all of these amazing studies, right, and benefits that gratitude has. But it also helps you build healthy relationships. So I see some of you have computers, some of you have phones, online. If you have paper, if you have a phone, if you have your computer, open up your notes. And I want you to write down a few things. And these are for you, right? I'm not going to ask you what they are. These are for you. What are you grateful for today? It doesn't have to be large. It can be small. For me, I'll give you an example, right? Every day I'm grateful that I wake up and I have a roof over my head. Because there was a time in my life that I didn't, right? So what are you grateful for today? Then, did you do any physical exercise or activity, right? Did you move your body? It can even just be walking from the subway to here. It can be walking the dog, for those tuning in across the globe. It can be anything. Did you get outside and did you move your body? Did you do a daily affirmation? Or have you ever heard of a daily affirmation, right? Okay. Did you accomplish anything? And accomplishments can be whatever you want. How many of you guys accomplished something today? Raise your hand. All right, good, yeah. I would say you did too. You know why? Because you're here. You're present. You're in this moment, right? Like I said earlier, I'm proud of you. That's an accomplishment. Did anything go wrong today? And if so, how can we learn from it? Now, these are things that you can do every night, every morning, every day, okay? And you can keep a log for yourself. My partners and I, we have developed applications that actually track this, right? And we have seen that the more that individuals log these different aspects of their daily life or of their recovery, there's actually a direct correlation with improvement of self-worth. So the more that you are self-aware of yourself and you check in with yourself, the more your self-worth and your identity of yourself improves, okay? So thank you. Journaling is very important. So I hope that you guys all do that. Now we're going to talk about the power of love, right? And when I think about the power of love, like, wow, being in a relationship is great and loving family is great and all that. The real power of love is, do you love yourself? Okay? And it's not being conceited, right? Do you truly love yourself and who you are? Because in order for you to give love to another human being, or a community or an entire population, you have to love yourself. Otherwise, how can you share that love? Right? So, my favorite daily affirmation that I do, and it's not one that I read, right? But I look in the mirror most days, right? It's been a little hectic this week. But I look in the mirror every day and I tell myself, I love you. I believe in you. I'm proud of you. You are my hero, right? And while at first, when I started doing that stuff after I got clean, I did not believe it at all. And I thought it was the craziest thing because how could I love myself after some of the stuff that I've been through, after some of the things that I've done, right? But eventually you do believe that you can be your own hero, right? And you can be more and you can accomplish your goals because in order to change the world, you have to believe in yourself. And for those of you that are tuning in across the globe, if you have any doubt in what you can do to make a change in this world, I believe in you. And I will continue believing in you and each and every one of you until you have the ability to believe in yourself. And then you can find other individuals to spread that love and belief with, right? Because there are individuals that need it. We don't know what individuals are going through, right? So we treat them with love and kindness and compassion and empathy. Now we're going to talk about the power of unity. And when I think of unity, it's like the last 4 letters of community, right? So how can we all be together, right? To find that common goal, to strive to change the world or our communities or an individual. And when I think about the power of unity, I think of this nonprofit that I work with in the Antelope Valley of California, and it's called Solely of the Community. And this nonprofit was developed and built from tragedy. The executive director of this nonprofit lost her daughter to an accident with a drunk driver. In her grief and loss, she decided that she wanted to do something for her community in her daughter's name. So now she has developed a nonprofit that helps single parents and vulnerable populations in the Antelope Valley with basic resources and backpack giveaways, toy drives around Kwanzaa, and I am grateful to work with this organization. They just hosted a series of mental health pop-ups throughout the Antelope Valley, which is in Los Angeles County, and they serviced over 1,000 families in a 2-month period. They gave out 1,000 backpacks 2 months ago for back to school, filled with school supplies. So they are doing real work and filling basic needs for families and individuals in the Antelope Valley. So I like to give them a shout out because there needs to be more organizations like Solely of the Community out there, right? And maybe one of you will start one of those one day. The power of empowerment, right? We empower ourselves, right? We take these skills and this knowledge and this information that we have learned and we empower ourselves to change the world, to change our community, to change our own lives. But you know what's better than that? Transferring that skill, knowledge, and information that we have learned to empower another individual, right? That is the real magic. How can we take everything that we're learning? How can you take everything that you're learning over these 4 days and transfer that to another individual to help them succeed? We transfer our empowerment and our knowledge because if we keep it to ourselves, it gets lost, right? So how do we share what we are learning and bring that community together? So I had a bunch of positive experiences that kind of led to where I'm at now and my ability to stand here at the International Youth Conference and present. When COVID happened, I started a podcast because I didn't know what to do with my time, and I'm a recovering addict. So if we have a lot of extra time, that's not good, right? Bad things can happen. So I started a podcast, and I was really dead set on getting that out to the world. And then I became very sick, and I couldn't do that anymore. So then I decided to go back to school. Right, I wanted to continue my education after dropping out of school 10 years before. And I had this idea because during COVID, you couldn't go to recovery meetings, you couldn't really get a lot of resources, but I saw my friends and people I know in my community dying from overdose because they didn't have access to resources. So I had an idea for an app called Clean. And I really wanted to build it, and I had a lot of challenges because I knew nothing about technology. And then I met, in my introduction to social work class at Long Beach City College, I met one of my mentors, Ruby Guillen, and we met in the class. I was asking questions and curious. She gave the professor her number to give me, and then we spoke, and she said, I think you can build this app. And I said, you are crazy. There is no way I can do this. But eventually, I was able to develop that app under her mentorship and support. And then she introduced me as well to Joseph Powers, who's another one of my mentors. And there's also Dr. Abraham Salinas at the University of South Florida. But all of a sudden, I was being surrounded by academics and brilliant minds and individuals that saw potential in me that I never knew that I had. And we work at Humanistic Technologies together, and Dr. Abraham Salinas is the executive director of the Harrell Center for Family Violence at the University of South Florida. So now I was put into this environment that I had never been in, and I had no choice to either soak it all in or fail, right? And luckily I soaked it all in. So then I began to understand that my lived experience had value, right? I deserved to have a seat at the table and to stand up wherever I was and be proud of the things that I had gone through. So I turned my lived experience into becoming an advocate. I was afforded the opportunity by Abraham Salinas to present at the National Drug Summit for the Drug Free America Foundation 2 days after I met him, which was pretty crazy, right? And he actually made a case study out of my story, which I guess means it's weird to me, right? But he had me present with him at the conference, and I was able to present the next year by myself, and I'll be presenting this year as well in February, or next year as well in February. I began running a youth drug and education prevention program as the executive director of Thrive Alive in San Clemente, California. Eventually, that program rebranded, and I stepped away from being the executive director, and I started facilitating a series called Aim High out there and transferring my knowledge and information to youth. At Long Beach City College, I became first the vice president and then the president of the Justice Scholars Program, which is a program for individuals that are system impacted and students to create a safe place and sense of community at the university. I'm very honored to have been mentored by Dr. Anahita Madavi West at Long Beach City College as my advisor in the club, and it was a phenomenal experience. I also began teaching at the Prison Education Project with Ruby and Joseph, and teaching to incarcerated juveniles, and we really focused on soft skills, right, and helping provide them with the skills that they need to communicate better and can transfer once they re-enter society. Then there's clean, right? And I'm just gonna, this is something I'm very proud of because I never thought I would ever be able to do anything like this. And then thanks to, brilliant minds around me and people that believed in me and supported me, we were able to develop an app called Clean, which is pilot testing in Minnesota, Virginia, and Florida, and is seeing profound results, right? So this is basically a resource directory for individuals suffering from substance abuse disorder. Because understanding my lived experience and what I went through getting clean and sober, the hardest thing to do is to get started, right? To really put down that first drink or drug and know where to go, know what to do, to have any type of idea or pathway to get clean and sober. So it's all there. And that gratitude list that we just did, that's in there too, right? So everybody is checking in on that. And that's actually the results from our first data pool that we presented at USF as far as the impact that the gratitude jar has. So it's almost a near perfect correlation. I also began working on anti-recidivism, right? Which for individuals that don't know what that is, you go to jail, you get out, you go back. And that's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle that just continues to go on. Well, we met a nonprofit in Florida called Empowered to Change, and they had a paper-based program. Well, my team and I took their paper-based program and digitized it into a mobile application, which is a case management tool, but it's not really a case management tool because it is user and participant driven, right? It builds accountability in the participants. And the amazing thing about this application is that in the first year of the pilot program of it, we tracked over 8,000 recovery meetings. We lost 75% of the participants became gainfully employed, and we saw the graduation rate of the program increase by almost 50%. That's with 80 participants. So imagine if we can spread this out across the world, right? Then we create real change, right? And the reason that it's important to reduce recidivism is from a multi-generational approach. The impact that that has on children is extremely profound. So if we can keep individuals from getting incarcerated to begin with, or from continuing that cycle of being reincarcerated, then we have an opportunity to reduce one of those ACEs scores, right? So it takes small actions to make these changes, and we are very proud of this technology. Let's get that one. All right, so this is something I'm very excited about. Understanding everything that I went through and all of the skills and knowledge and information that I have learned from amazing mentors that I have, learned from the IYC team and from college and taking all of that and combining that into a platform to help youth. So my sister and I have just started a nonprofit in Tampa Bay, Tampa, Florida, called GLUE. Can you guess what that stands for? Gratitude, love, unity, empowerment. Good job. Awesome. So basically, it is all of these skills put together, and how can we help provide drug education and prevention for youth from a holistic approach? The program has 4 segments. The first one is gratitude and love, where we're teaching soft skills. We're teaching how to eat right? We're trying to counteract adverse childhood experiences that these youth are undergoing without letting them know that they've even had adverse childhood experiences, right? So we're providing consistent positive experiences, which will eventually create resiliency and the ability for them to understand healthy relationships. Then we also have a mentorship aspect, so we can have youth mentoring youth, right? Because they go through similar lived experience, and who better, as we saw earlier, to speak with than another peer that is your age demographic and is going through the same experiences that you are. And that's our goal, right? Mentorship. So from understanding adverse childhood experiences and providing positive experiences, we create knowledge and education that is transferable, which will eventually have a multi-generational impact. Then we're going to take all that and we're going to put it in an app and spread it across the country, across the globe, right? And really provide positive skills and resource education to youth, focusing on drug education and prevention. So, let me back up. While all this stuff is really cool, and I'm really grateful to share my story, and it's weird.
Sure, I understand.
And Siri's talking to me, so that's cool. They don't understand either. Well, it's really, I'm grateful to stand up here and share my story and my truth and some of the amazing things that I have done. It's also, weird to do that, right? And to understand why I'm standing up here instead of so many other individuals who are no longer with us, right? And that's because I had an opportunity. And I want that to sink in. The one thing that can change an individual's life is an opportunity to be seen, to be heard, and to be acknowledged. That can change their life course. Okay, and while all of that stuff that I mentioned throughout this presentation is cool and I'm grateful for it, the best thing that I have ever done in my life is regain custody of my son, right? Thanks to thanks to amazing mentors and a support system that told me that I could do this when I didn't think that I could. I officially regained sole physical and legal custody of my son Matthew in June of last year, and we moved to Florida together, and we have been living together for just over a year now, 15 months. And let me tell you, it is harder than getting clean, being a parent. It is harder than getting clean, but I would not change it for the world. And he is my life. He is my joy. He is why I am here. And I also just want to say, that reconnecting with my family. My son and I live with my sister and my brother-in-law and their 3 kids, because they allow us to have the support, not only for me to achieve the goals and the dreams that I have as I get emotional, but to help Matthew thrive. And without them, none of this would be possible. So I just wanted to give them a shout out because, we talk about the support system that we need and the love and the compassion and the empathy. Without their support, without their love, without their love for my son, right? None of this would be possible. So I want to thank you all for allowing me to share my truth. And I love you, I believe in you, and I am proud of all of you. If you have any questions, you I'm an open book, so if y'all want to ask anything, now's your time. Or if there's any comments in the chat.
Any comments in person that anyone has? Questions?
Yes.
This might be a bit of a loaded question, and if you don't wish to answer it, that's fine. But I'm just curious about like how you've mentioned about like how the prison system did not let you recover, but once you received the like a rehabilitating system, like that let you. So like, do you think and like I don't know, like do you think that for like so-called like drug crimes, do you think that there should not be prison and instead there should be rehabilitation through criminalization?
I love that question, and I do have an opinion on this, and I will keep it very brief. So I believe that when you arrest the addict, you are just re-traumatizing the addict, okay? So when we focus on putting individuals in jail for substances, we really need to focus on the individuals that are distributing the narcotics and distributing the drugs, right? The individuals that are in active addiction don't need to go to jail, right? They need support and resources, as you mentioned. Now, at times, other crimes happen while you're under the influence of substances, right? So it really depends on a case-by-case scenario. But some narcotics probably we should keep arresting individuals, but it really stems from if we can have a world filled with love and filled with community and filled with camaraderie where we all have the ability to at least try to meet each other where they're at, then I think we would have to worry about that issue less.
We have a question online.
Mhm.
So we have a question by Karen. She's saying, thank you for this encouraging session. Good support system can really help, but what happens if one does not have any support system at that moment?
Yeah, and that's a very good question, right? And I think that support systems don't have to be what we always label as support systems, right? Our peers and our friends, right, can be a support system, but it's having an open dialogue and the ability to converse with them, right? And that's also where accessibility to resources, where that is an issue globally, right? So how can we, right, together work on making resources more accessible throughout the globe, right? Because yes, that is a challenge and it is very hard. I always say, and I learned early in recovery, that addiction, the true definition of addiction from somebody in recovery is addiction is the disease of isolation and the inability to form long-lasting relationships, right? You are unable to keep a friend circle. You are unable to do any of that. So while it's very hard, luckily through technology, you have the opportunity to attend virtual meetings, whether it's for AA, NA, there's Al-Anon, recovery related, but there's also meetings for all kinds of self-help groups, right? Or Facebook groups. And while that's not always the best option, you're still doing something, right? So, I mean, that's a good question. And I think that that's something that we can all brainstorm together of how can we make more resources for individuals that are struggling.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Oh, go ahead. No, you're in charge.
Are there any other questions or comments? I think we have still some time. If not,
Yeah, if not, thank you all very much. You guys are awesome.